what is your favourite ice cream?
Oh, okay. So I think I'm going to go with stracciatella.
You know that all our Italian listeners just rolled over and died at your pronunciation just then.
How should I say it?
Well, I think you could say straccia. That would help.
Straccia.
Stracciatella. Yeah.
Stracciatella. I can't do it. Anyway.
No,
Accents are
great.
really interesting in speaking another language, aren't they?
Do you know in The Simpsons, the guy who works in the school?
Principal Skinner?
No, the no, the what's his name? He's got a Scottish accent.
Oh,
Willie.
Willie.
What's his role at the school?
He's the janitor, or I guess we would say the caretaker here
Caretaker,
in the UK.
the janitor, yes. And in the Italian version of The Simpsons, the janitor has a Sardinian accent, which tells you everything you need to know about what mainland Italy thinks of Sardinia. The teacher I've had for longest is Sardinian, and I've spent a lot of time there. So my accent, if I had anything other than a brutally English Italian accent, it would hint towards Sardinian.
It is interesting when you've been taught by people with a regional accent, a second language, isn't it? Because we picked up most of our initial bits of Portuguese in the Alentejo region, which is like
The countryside.
Yeah, and it's it's an accent that's as strong as a Geordie accent in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So there are people, in the same way that people in the UK might say, "Oh, I can't really get an ear for a Geordie accent," that might make some people find it a bit difficult.
Could you give us an example? Could you, I think, of a Geordie accent?
I'll try. I'm not very good at a Geordie accent, but roller coaster, poopa scooper, Kawasaki. There we go.
I love that you chose roller coaster. What was it?
Roller coaster, pooper scooper, and Kawasaki. It's a thing. I can't remember which comedian it is, but there's certain keywords that you use to get into like so a Liverpudlian accent. Everybody knows is chicken. Chicken.
Oh my God.
So, but rather than me just going, here are all the accents I can do. Would you like to hear my? Would you like to hear my posh lady from Morningside in Edinburgh?
Go on.
Oh, hello. Will you be having a cup of tea? Oh, how nice to see you. Please sit down. It's so nice of you to join us. Which is dreadful, but I can only do it if she's. I have to imagine myself as in a drawing room with a pot of tea.
Stracciatella.
This is a podcast in which two friends have serious conversations about silly things and silly conversations about serious things.
I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller.
Welcome to Midlifing. Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn. Don't give me that, because if it's not your turn, I have a topic.
Oh dear, isn't it?
It is your turn.
Topics have been raining on me this week. I don't even know where to begin.
You did mention that you had a cavalcade of ideas raining down on your tiny little bonce. Your head is a perfectly normal size. I don't know why I called it tiny and little.
Tiny little. What was the word you used though? Tiny.
Bonce. B-O-N-C-E. Bonce.
Bonce.
Is that not a word you're familiar with?
I think I've heard it in the context of like being knocked on the bonce.
Yeah. Well, that's what was happening with ideas and you. Hit me with your best shot. Come on.
Okay, so one of my guilty secrets, guilty pleasures, that's the right word.
I prefer the idea of one of my guilty secrets. This is where you say, so,
no,
I
guilty
might have
pleasures.
killed someone. Which is no laughing matter.
No, it's not. So, yes, I was thinking about guilty pleasure. One of my guilty pleasures is, one of them is rom-coms, but that's not the one I was thinking of.
There's so many things I want to say about The Holiday.
The Notebook.
I want to talk about specifically the Portuguese section of Love Actually. That's my favourite. That's always been my favourite through line of narrative. I think it's very sweet.
Is there a sequel to Love? I think there was a sequel.
They
Oh,
made
yes,
one
some sort of Christmas thing.
I think it was for Children in Need, but I don't know if anybody watched it. I didn't. And I assume that I am.
I did because I'm a rom-com completist.
So that's not the topic, I take it?
No, that's not one of
guilty
my
pleasure.
guilty pleasures. I mean, that is one of them, but it's not the one. And one of them is, which I'm always a little bit hesitant to. I can, and I think I have, I can spend a lot of time reading, practicing, working on the computer with things to do with productivity. One of the things that I was just thinking about being in control and being out of control, partly because I thought, is part of my interest or part of the, let's say, the psychological basis of my curiosity is some kind of need to be in control or to maximize my sense of control in a, let's say, in a work environment or something like that. That by knowing everything that needs to be known about productivity, that somehow makes me feel safe. And so I was wondering, my question really is, when have you felt most out of control, either briefly or over a period of time in your life?
Okay, so I'm going to give the most middle-class response to this. So when we moved here to the house that we live in now, which we've lived in for 13 and a bit years.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It's a long time.
That's funny. I always think that I knew you in Northampton much longer. You know, before you left.
Yeah. No, it was a blink of an eye. This is how long we've lived here. I need to replace the stair carpet in this house because there are holes in it because of
Jeff.
Actually, it was Steve that made the holes in the carpet, not
Oh,
Jeff.
Steve.
Yeah, poor dead Steve. That's a very sad story. We'll save that for another
He's
day.
dead.
In the spreadsheet of our lives, Steve, who was a dog for anybody who doesn't know, just in case you're worrying. I mean, I'm sure you're not worrying.
Why didn't we call this podcast the spreadsheet of our lives?
Because I don't know that our reliance on keeping a tally of who is and who isn't dead would become such an overwhelming theme. So what happened was Bob got a job down in the southwest when we were both living in the Midlands. So we were both working in the same place. She came back from her interview. She got told on the train journey home that she'd got the job. So she came back from her interview and said, "Don't worry, what I'll do is I'm going to just rent a little room and I'll come back at the weekend." And I said, "That seems like a really sensible idea. Well, let's go down next weekend and have a look at some places that you might live." I'd never been to this particular part of the world. And we arrived here and I was like, hang about. This is by the seaside. This is beautiful. This is the most delightful and divine little corner of the world. How come you get to live here and I've got to live in the Midlands?
There's an excellent ice cream store there too, as well, isn't there?
There is. Yeah, so what happened was we put our house on the market. Things were looking good. We'd had quite a lot of people around. We'd had a couple of offers. I'm so sorry in advance because I did say that this is... But
so it's funny, isn't it, about out of control? I was so curious about what I was thinking in my head, and then
it was not going to be
because I've never had this
turgid.
I love that word, turgid.
Let's say it was the Thursday, and on the Friday there was a run on the Northern Rock Bank, and this was the beginning of the 2008 crash.
When you say what, can you you're just a run means people started selling it. Basically, its value started decreasing.
What happened was people started trying to withdraw their money from Northern Rock. It was the first bank at the beginning of the banking crisis. So this is one of the things that precipitated like the 2008 financial crash.
At least in this part of the world.
I was going to say here in the UK. Yeah. This was specifically a UK thing. You know, there's obviously all the I want to say Fannie and somebody else.
Yeah, the subprime mortgage problems.
Yeah, that's the stuff US. That was in the States.
Yeah. Fannie and May.
Yeah.
Is it?
And then there's, I think it was.
All our economist listeners will be just going, "Oh, please get back to talking about fucking ice cream."
And so that was the point where I felt the most out of control
vulnerable.
because we were trying to sell a house on a downturning market. It was at the time the most exposing moment.
Because
And
it really is it is the literal sense that there is nothing you can do about this. It's not like
Yeah.
you couldn't really bake some bread and encourage buyers in Northampton or whatever like that.
No, because we'd gone from a moment where it was, what could we do to make the house the most attractive on the road? There's lots of things that you can do in a nice buoyant market, but then the moment that the arse falls out of everything, you're kind of just going, well, if anybody's got any sense, they're not buying a house right now. You understand that on a kind of like really visceral level. Yeah. Is that the kind of thing that you were expecting, or did you have
No, I had no
another
idea, but it's actually that's really interesting because it's about a total loss of agency in what became a massive worldwide problem, right? And the scale of that.
Yeah, and also we didn't, we're at the other end of this going, nothing happened. We were fine. It was all good, but
Sure.
we couldn't know that at the time, that it was all going to turn out good. And I know lots of people lost their houses. Lots of people were in, really difficult, left with what's called negative equity. You owe more than you can realise back on the property because of the falling market. And we were never in that situation.
It just reminds me of that book, The Big Short, which they turned into a film about the subprime mortgage bubble. I mean, we could talk about greed at this particular point. And I think I was thinking about, I was remembering a teacher at the Fame Academy, and it was a Graham class. Martha Graham was
I was just going to say, Martha Graham. Let's
Yeah,
give a bit of
and
context for
we
those
were doing-
non-dancers.
Yeah, we were doing. If you just do a quick DuckDuckGo search for Robin Williams, Martha Graham, that will give you a pretty good idea of everything you need to know about Martha Graham. And I'll put it in the show notes. We were being a little bit. It was quite early in the class, and we were being a little bit rowdy. A little bit not. We were just acting up a bit, acting out, acting up, acting up. Oh, phrasal verbs. And this teacher, a beautiful man, beautiful, caring, thoughtful, gentle. We called him Papa Joe. His name was Joe Scolio, and what a dancer he was, and what a human being. Just beautiful man. And he promptly got up and left. He just walked out of the class. And I think the reason I'm saying it is because I remember being in a situation teaching when I lost control, not of the class, that happens all the time, right? But of myself in the class. Meaning I got absurdly angry, like really totally out of control in a state. Not what you've your example there was much more like, things happened to you, which rendered you out of control. Meaning, you were. But I'm talking about a situation where whatever happened, can't even remember the specifics, but I just lost it. And it just, fills me with sort of terror just thinking about it. But I was thinking about Papa Joe Scolio, and I have a feeling that he didn't for a second lose control. I think he was making a very deliberate gesture to indicate something. I thought about it after this situation in which I just got really furious in a class. And I've also been in situations where I've been in control and been angry, that I've, in effect, performed anger. I mean, I wouldn't do it now, I don't think. Circumstances don't happen. These are, much younger students, and the kind of the corralling of a group of dance students is always a bit kind of slightly unusual. But again, I was less experienced and younger, and so the difference in our ages wasn't as great, and all sorts of things which were, which I think I perceived to be undermining my authority. I'm not sure I had many claims to authority anyway, but and I just it's so stuck with me, that feeling of not only the experience of the loss of personal control, but then also the ramifications afterwards, that what the group was left with was a particular state of me that I think had I could imagine had a stayed with them much longer than whatever that particular scenario was. And so when I was thinking about being out of control, that was a situation that came to mind. And I wasn't thinking about long, like something which was like a period of your life, which is, in a sense, what you've just talked about.
How did you re-establish a sense of, well, you could either think of it as control or of yourself, or you could think of it as trust with the group. Did you make a reference to it? Did you say, oh, okay, so that was a thing that happened?
I think my memory, again, I'm not even sure, but my memory is that I addressed it. Not then. I was too just trying to kind of keep some semblance of evenness, a little late. But my memory is of addressing it like the next time we met or whatever, and just to say, look, I screwed up. This is, doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, you don't deserve that kind of response. It doesn't deserve that kind of response. So it was sort of maybe it was kind of expressing a particular kind of vulnerability in the aftermath. I don't know about this conversation. It's strange because dancing has a kind of relationship to being out of control. You think of the times social dancing, when you're just really just dancing and dancing and dancing, in that kind of sense where almost like you get taken over by the dancing.
Which takes us back to an earlier conversation we had about you dancing in a square in Italy, which
right.
In my head is Armie Hammer in the film Call Me By Your Name. But I'm not sure if we can reference Armie Hammer anymore since the big furore of his behaviour.
Oh, I don't know anything about the...
apparently he sent a DM about wanting to drink someone's blood. I didn't pay that much attention.
You mean it was QAnon related?
No, as in he was being a bit sexy saucy, and he was all like, that whole... I don't know how to finish that sentence. It was a sexy message he was sending to someone who wasn't his wife.
This is a slight tangent, but drinking someone's blood... Oh, wait, sorry, the problem was... Is he married or something? I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, I think the messages were sent at the point that he was married.
Oh, right. So it wasn't about the fact that he was talking about drinking blood.
Oh, no, I think there's been lots of... It's this whole, again, to refer back to the now mythical cancel culture episode, it's that idea of being cancelled because he did something which... It's really interesting. He's articulated himself as in these messages as being interested in cannibalism in relationship to sex, and then there's like lots of kink shaming that is happening as a result of this, and it's kind of like, this is really, really interesting because this is absolutely the language of kink shaming, which we're supposed to not want to do anymore because we're supposed to not live in that kind of a space. We're supposed to be much more inclusive, and that sense that the heteronormative is a kind of a prison anyway. So we should be happy that he wants to eat people's feet and drink their blood, but apparently not, because it's just that whole bizarre world. Anyway, being out of control, dancing, like social dancing, as you were saying. I'll cut all of this out.
I can't tell you how far my jaw has dropped just listening to this chat, because I don't know. It's just.
I mean, it's all hearsay. I don't even know if it's. I think it's one of those interesting things where it almost doesn't matter if he said the thing that he said in a direct message. It's been attributed to him because he has been considered to be this like white bread, old Hollywood type movie star, and so he becomes a very safe object to project desire onto, and then that safeness is removed as he becomes human in front of people, and it's really fascinating because I don't know if you ever watch.
I'm just laughing because I'm just doing a DuckDuckGo search for Armie Hammer, and the two things that come up are Armie Hammer and Armie Hammer Cannibal.
See, and it's fascinating because this is the same culture that that. Have you ever seen, I think it's BuzzFeed is the website that does it, which is they get people to read thirst tweets. Are you familiar with thirst tweets?
No, and I'm just loving should I go there?
Don't. Well, you can if you want, but what happens is that they get people like Timothy Chalamet or Armie Hammer or Cillian Murphy, and they have to...
These people.
They're not as mainstream as the kind of the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world. They're kind of a bit of a level down, and people write things about them like, I want them to spit in my mouth, or I want them to choke me, and there's all those kinds of things. And then the BuzzFeed gets these people to read them out loud.
BuzzFeed gets those
gets
people, the actors,
the
to read out what?
Yeah, to read out the thirst tweets. So
So a thirst tweet, is that what you're saying?
it will be something like, I think there's one that sticks in my head, and it's somebody like, it might not be Tom Holland, the current Spider-Man, but it's somebody like Tom Holland.
I've just seen what Daniel Radcliffe reads thirst tweets.
There you go. And it might even be Daniel Radcliffe. But somebody wrote on the internet, let's say it was Daniel Radcliffe, I want Daniel Radcliffe to destroy my bussy. And he reads it out loud. He reads it out loud, and then he just looks really quizzically off camera and goes, "What's a bussy?" And somebody whispers, "Boy pussy." And he goes, "Oh, boy pussy." Like he's trying to process what a boy pussy might be, and then he works out, oh, bottom hole. Oh, and so he's doing all of this.
I'm so glad it took you 3/4 of an hour to get there, but there you did.
So there are these. I mean, I guess this is.
This entire episode is getting out of control.
I know it is, isn't it? But this is a moment, I guess, of them being out of control, where they're being asked to address.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to take my shirt off. It's so funny because I was just thinking, oh, this is a totally stink conversation about being out of control, and here we are.
I promise I will try and get us back to social dancing.
No, Bussy. Let's stay with Bussy. Is it Bussy?
Yeah, Bussy, which is a
Darcy
portmanteau word.
Darcy Bustle.
No, Bussy is a portmanteau word. It's a neologism, bringing together boy and pussy.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It kind of, and then I was trying to be sensible, but I do find it interesting. He was one of the, people have these like...
They trusted.
Well, they have... Yeah, I think so. I think they have these baroque fantasies about, particularly him and Timothée Chalamet in relationship to Call Me by Your Name, which was a really beautifully queer film, despite the fact that both of the performers are straight. And I guess the defense of the fact that both of the performers are straight is that arguably, although they're in a gay relationship with one another, both of the characters are fundamentally... I'm pausing over the word straight here, but they're straight acting and they're straight representing in the world.
Yeah.
Even though their internal desires are more complex, are more human. I was going to say complex, but I think it's just fairer to say more human. And I wonder if it's the fact that Armie Hammer has proved himself to be like the rest of us, a bit complex, a little bit, keen on things that maybe we wouldn't tell everyone.
And now he's been kink-shamed and cancelled.
Now he's being kink-shamed and cancelled, and I just find it interesting because it's the same people who want him to destroy their bussy, I guess, as in people on the internet. But you were talking about losing control in social dancing.
No, I just can't. I just don't. I just cannot. I cannot get back there. It just feels like.
I feel like our unfaithful listeners will be really mad at me for taking us down.
I don't think they will be
very
at all.
Unhelpful path. The path of least resistance.
It's also probably most of them already know about all this stuff. It doesn't remind me.
The joy will be having it explained to you.
It does remind me. We used to have these family Christmases where my beautiful niece, she would construct a quiz, and we'd be put into teams, and we'd get sets of questions, and she was very good at balancing the kinds of questions for the teams. And but there was always these blocks of questions which were about popular culture. Part of the running joke was because I just had no idea. I was good for sports, good for arts, good for science, pop culture. Nah. Anyway, dancing. It's a curious, because most of my dancing, well, not most, certainly a good part of my dancing life has been improvising. So there's it's a certain stepping into not knowing what's going to happen. And yet the kind of conditions and the kind of ways of dancing, there's a certain amount of, those are unwritten kinds of things about taste and aesthetic things, which are effectively controlling this entry into being out of control. So it's a totally sort of rigid, predetermined way of being, and under the illusion of anything goes, which is totally not the kind of thing I'm talking about in social dancing, when anything can go although, maybe the kinds of dancing, but still you can see extraordinarily diverse things on a social dancing floor, let's say, but also that kind of sense of people not being in themselves, almost as if they've exited themselves, and it's just, and to me that's, this extraordinary kind of, as if they're in trance, and that amazing expression of being human. Whoa, love it. And so I guess the flip side, of course, is to, if we've got time to, what about being controlled?
Now, what are you asking there? When you say being controlled, do you mean when I have got everything sort of squared away, or where I feel like my strings are being pulled?
Well, I was thinking the latter, but certainly it could be either. Or when you've controlled others.
Oh, I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
I am never going to talk about the times I have manipulated people to get what I want.
We should have started there. Fuck. I started with the wrong question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about all those listeners who want really messy conversations between Lee. I apologize profoundly.
I think I sometimes surprise myself with how just middle class and privileged my responses are.
Oh.
To think about, here we are touching on shame again. But, the moment that I can think about where I'm the most out of control is where I might lose out on a property deal. And you just kind of take a moment to reflect upon that and go, that's a bit of it's an interesting thing to be the thing that sort of springs to mind, but it's also the truth. But
I think it's really important that money, I don't think it's even about the scale of money. So yes, when you're talking about property, it's a particular scale, it's a particular class and particular opportunities, all that kind of thing. But at the same time, that maps on to many experiences that people have.
What you just said there, I'm really aware that I personally, I was born into a relatively comfortable and affluent situation. I didn't see my parents struggle because my parents didn't have me until they were relatively old. They had me in their early 30s, which in the 70s was late to have their first child in their in their 30s. And bearing in mind that they both left school at 14, they'd been working for half their life by that point. More than half their life.
Yeah.
So I know that I still carry with me the language of my dad and my mum. My dad particularly, he trusts nothing except property.
Yeah.
You can't rent is dead money. You've got to put your money into property because he was brought up in a council house. And the council house that he was brought up in was a huge step up from what he was born into. He talks about being born into a slum in Blackpool, that when they were knocked down, these back-to-back terrace houses, and he was put into a council flat, he was like, this was amazing. This was amazing. We had 3 bedrooms for a family of 8. So you kind of go, it's not that many. But for him, it was all of a sudden this massive shift from a one up, one down. So his narratives are so deeply inscribed in me, even though I don't necessarily feel them in the same way. I never went without food. My mum went without food when she was a kid. I didn't. My mum did. And that's that different. My mum was the child of a single parent. That's also deep shame connected to that in the 50s when she was a kid. I'm sorry, I'm 40s and 50s. Yes, I'm rambling. But just thinking about being out of control, the contextual nature of it, I think that sense of potentially losing that kind of capital, literal and I guess cultural, that was so inscribed into me growing up that you have to get on the ladder, you have to save up, you have to get enough money to do this, and because this is the only thing that's going to keep you safe.
So what you're saying is
they can't take that off you.
That's right. But what you are saying is that that the reality of the situation, meaning the actual circumstances in relation to the mortgage, etc., were not necessarily directly related to the sensation. Actually, those things they're fed into how we understand the world deeply. It's more complex, isn't it?
It is. I think the idea of where we landed on last week, where we kind of landed on again here, that sense of shame still being a kind of a big iceberg that's floating towards us.
I did have a thought that maybe we should briefly discuss with our listeners the marketing and communications meeting. We had a meeting with our marketing and communications team during the week. We should talk to them about that meeting because I think it actually...
For a second, I'm listening to you thinking, did we have a marketing meeting that I didn't go to? Is this another one of those meetings that I turned up too drunk for? Yeah, we should definitely talk about the
because it does affect the
marketing
listeners.
meeting.
It does affect. Yeah. Because anyway, and so I think the outcome really was that we've had to fire that team because they haven't really, because they were suggesting that our goal should be to expand our audience. That's
stupid.
Don't you think?
I think the idea of exponential growth in a fixed market economy is really... I've got no idea what I'm saying.
But it's true, right? That and we'd fallen into the trap. They'd misguided us. They'd misled us, and we were, sending out little messages saying, "Tell your friends, rate us on Apple Podcasts," that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think it's also because they kept bombarding us with regular text messages. Oh, we're now at 947 downloads. Soon we'll be at 1,000 downloads. Just think what an achievement that will be. And it's like, and we drank the Kool-Aid.
We drank it, and so we've decided to give up that Kool-Aid, and we want to let you know, dear and faithful and unfaithful listeners, that we only want you.
We don't want growth. We want depth.
Exactly. So don't tell anyone. Keep this as a small, private thing, just between us.
Is it? Can everybody just lean in a little bit? Just lean in a little bit. I want you
closer.
Just a little closer. This is our secret. Don't share it.